your microphone on, you might flip in and out of that presenter on screen. But as long as the participants have them off, only the person who is speaking will be shown on screen.
Perfect.
You guys have any questions?
Oh, I think we're good. How are you feeling, Devin? You're muted, I think.
All right, I'm feeling okay. The YouTube live will automatically switch to this session then, and then I'll monitor comments there also.
Yep, so on the YouTube channel,
Yes.
this video will be the very first video in just a moment. It takes a second to refresh. And what I'll also do for all of our friends online is there is the link. So everybody can share that out socially and really get the live going also.
Perfect. All right, so are we ready to?
Yep, Jess, you are host, and you guys are live on Facebook.
Perfect.
Or on YouTube, so I'm going to head out.
Okay, thanks.
Great, thank you.
Thanks, Dave. See ya.
All right, good afternoon.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
I'm going to do my little moderator spiel and introduce you. Does that sound okay?
That sounds great.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Devin, and I'm your moderator for the session. If you could please remember to mute your mic, add any questions to our chat. If you're watching on Facebook Live, or if you have trouble with your tech and can't stay in the Zoom, please go to the YouTube Live link, which is on that distance learning website, and I'll post it in the chat when I'm done talking. And then we'll be monitoring comments in both places. So if you could mute your microphones, that would be very helpful. And I'd love to introduce Jocelynn. She's going to talk to you about Google Classroom and some of the amazing things she can do with the feedback.
Thank you. My name is Jocelynn Buckentin. I teach in Hutchinson, Minnesota. I am a tech integrationist there. And then I also, I get to keep one foot into the classroom, one toe into the classroom. Just gonna make sure. So I am sharing my screen with you now. If you are able to join my Google Classroom to kind of workshops through some things with us, please feel free to join us. I want to note that some districts have this feature turned off. So if you're trying to join with your school's Google account and it's not allowing you to do so, that might be the case. And if that's the case, I do have the presentation slides linked. And I've tried to link a lot of those resources in there as well so that you don't miss out on anything. And I'll be sharing kind of as I go through Google Classroom with you so that you have the ability to kind of see things from some different perspectives. Again, if you're able to join us, use that class code to jump in as a student in that Google Classroom. That would be fantastic. And if not, I have these handy slides available that we will be going through as well. So welcome. I feel like it's a little disconcerting here because when I say faster feedback, I don't necessarily mean just like meaningless feedback. And so I feel like the faster word gives a connotation that, you know, you're trying to kind of breeze through something. And that's definitely not the case. We're trying to strive for meaningful feedback.
Sorry, so Jocelynn, I'm going to just chime in that people are having trouble getting into the classroom. I just want to confirm with you that it's posted on the Summit webpage in your session materials, correct?
Yep.
Okay, I'll link that into the chat.
Perfect. And you could even I can grab that code here and paste it into the chat. If you want to try to get in. Oh, thank you, Kathy. It's like a couple people have posted it. If it doesn't work for you, it just probably means that your district may not be whitelisted. You could try it with a personal Google account and probably get in that way. But again, don't feel like you have to do that. I will share a lot of the resources through the slides as well. So if you can get in, great. If not, that's okay too. Thanks, Devin. So I just want to start off with some of the methods and some of the background here. The district I work in Hutchinson, we've been doing planning for and implementing e-learning days. Last year was our first year trying that for weather 6 through 12. And then we were going to add K-5 this year. of course, knock on wood, I mean, I guess it's May, we shouldn't have any snow, but we didn't have to use our e-learning plans in the elementary level. But we did begin the process for that. So all of these plans and the plans for digital feedback on student work, we're starting to be in more development during that period. I've also been using my own students to kind of workshop a lot of ways to give feedback on digital work and what's working and what doesn't work. So that was especially helpful for me jumping into that the distance learning role. I do have one class of Careers 9 right now. I have 31 students. And so the unique part about my own situation, and some of my Hutchinson teachers can attest, we ended try 2, and then we went on a week of spring break and we never came back. So I have never met my students, and that is particularly challenging. You forget how much you rely on that in person, like you meeting your student, getting a sense for who they are as a person, and then having to interact online. So I've really tried to dig into this feedback piece to find out what works and what doesn't, because I've never met my kids and I can't even picture. I'm like, when I'm grading their work or when I'm sending them a private comment in Google Classroom, I can't bring up their face. And that's hard. And that's harder than I thought it would be. So to get started, I just want to kind of take you through session overview of what I'm hoping to accomplish in this session and some things I'm hoping to share with you. Some of it you may know, some of it may be new to you. I'm hoping I can give you a few nuggets to take away that are going to make your teaching life easier as we dive into feedback. I know that during this distance learning time, the concept of providing digital feedback on work has exploded. You may have occasionally dabbled in some of these areas, and now you're being forced to, that's how you're communicating with your students now, in more of that asynchronous way. Hopefully you're able to meet with them online as you are able. So I'm going to share with you today some tools to have work auto-graded and imported into your Google Classroom so that you can provide feedback on that work right in the same portal. I want to talk about how we can build relationships and prioritize relationships even through private comments, because right now that's all we've got outside of Google Meet or Zoom or whatever you may be using. I want to talk a little bit today about best practices for class discussions, ways to provide more personalized voice and video comments on student digital work, and how you can provide feedback using like Bitmojis and to showcase your personality a little bit as a way to kind of keep that classroom community going if it's something that, has essentially dissolved in this new environment. So we're building a different kind of classroom. And then I want to talk about the grades tab and the importance of returning student work and having this back and forth between the students submitting something and you returning it to them, because that takes care of a lot of the common issues I see in Google Classroom in terms of grading, especially where we start to see late work and missing work. So to start with, I can't preach this enough. I don't like the revamping of the Google Classroom stream. So what I mean by that is when I go into my Google Classroom and you have the stream in the first tab, this typically by default is an unorganized mess of the last thing you posted. And that may not be the order that you want your students to complete work in. That you don't necessarily want them to be working on the thing you posted this afternoon for tomorrow when they haven't done the assignments that are further down the list. So we can't get rid of the stream tab and we cannot make it default to the classwork tab, which are two common things that I've had teachers ask for. But we can change what the stream shows. And so right now you can see my stream has one post. It is a timely post. It is the slides for today. It is the YouTube live streaming link. It is the CEUs that you can use later. And that's very purposeful. If you click on the classwork tab, and if you're with me, and if not, I'll show you what this looks like. The classwork tab is very organized. I have my topics. I have things under each topic that we will kind of dig into during this session. And it's none of this is cluttering up the stream. The stream gets to be just for current announcements, Messages to my students of encouragement. It gets to be more of a place to interact as a class without having assignments kind of lost in the shuffle. So the way that you open up that stream, you can go into the settings gear up at the top, and then under classwork on the stream, I hide notifications completely. And that's going to help you to clean up that stream and allow the stream to be really what it should be used for, which is those timely announcements, class comments, letting, even if you have students able to post, that's how I think streams should be used. So again, it cleans things up. It's a shock to the system. My students were not happy when I turned it off. They depended on it. They're like, well, but how do I know what I have to do today? Click on the classwork tab. I have it laid out for you by date. It's more organized where I can control the organization in the classwork tab. So kill your stream. You'll thank me later. Your students might be a little upset at first, but I hope that they will get used to it. To segue a little bit into automatic grading. So Alice Keeler, if you know who Alice Keeler is, she came to Hutchinson last spring, I think at exactly 1 year ago. And she talked a lot about if you're giving students a task that is DOK1 or below, that is not a task that teachers should be taking the time to grade because you can let a robot do it for you. So if you can get students some automatic feedback on some of those like lower level DOK tasks, that's huge. It saves the teachers the time and the productivity and the burnout from having to page through student worksheets page after page to try to provide feedback on that work. It automates that feedback and it leaves you open then to spend your valuable time grading higher DOK level activities and structures. So just kind of think about it as the fact that there's a few benefits that we need to talk about. Students get the feedback very quickly, much faster than if you were right there grading their worksheet after they turned it in. So they're going to get their feedback from you. You get more time and it saves you from burnout. And then you get to take that time and really help your students, help to foster some greater understanding in your students. So some of the tools for automatic grading, there are 3 that I use almost exclusively. There are a ton of great tools that automatically grade student work. The problem with that is they don't necessarily import the scores back to Google Classroom. And for me, that's a critical part of my feedback loop. I want those quizzes scores to drop into my gradebook in Google Classroom in my grades tab. So I can go into the private comments and I can keep a dialogue going between myself and the students. So if I assign something through quizzes, that's a really great way for me to start seeing where they're at on those lower DOK level tasks. Google Forms quiz. That doesn't mean that everything has to be a quiz. I just turn it into a quiz. So I have to be very clear with my vocabulary with my students that if I'm giving them a Google Forms quiz, it's not a summative assessment. I'm giving it to them in a formative way so that it enables me to give some feedback on their work right away. And I'm going to show you what that looks like here in a moment.
Thank you, Ray.
And then Edpuzzle, thank you. Edpuzzle was mentioned by Sean Brandt, who did a whole session on Edpuzzle earlier today. So you can catch a whole training on just Edpuzzle once that goes live on the website. So thank you, Sean, for that. But Edpuzzle is another one that brings those scores. Once you've graded it in Edpuzzle, it brings the score into Google Classroom for you. So let's talk a little bit about Google Forms quiz first. You can turn on your quizzes. Once you're in a Google form, you click on your settings gear and you can then toggle on make this a quiz. So that's step 1. Step 2, you want to release the grade immediately after each submission. If the feedback is timely, that's really good for the student. You can also toggle on like the missed questions so that they can see what they missed, see where their missteps were. And then the next part is you have to go into each question and indicate, am I going to assign points to that question? And again, points are so arbitrary right now, but it's a nice way. It's like a tick of like, did I get it right or wrong? If that makes sense. So if you're not counting it as a grade, that's okay. it's just it's a way to see where they stood on that document. And so that you can list correct answers. More than likely, students are going to spell something wrong, or they're not going to list something exactly how it should look for your correct answer. So again, I don't check mark all answers as incorrect. I don't want that student to say like, well, I got it wrong. Nope, I have to review it, and then I'll go through it, and I'll indicate whether you got it right or wrong. And then this is my favorite part. You can provide feedback for all answers. So immediately after submission, if I know and I can anticipate some of those common mistakes that are made, or I want to go deeper on a question or add something additional to think about for the student, I can put that in under feedback for all answers. So this Google form, and this Google form is actually in the classroom, and I think I have it also shared in the presentation. But this particular assignment is something I gave my Careers 9 class about the secrets of how to get better at talking to people. And they had to watch a little YouTube video and then reflect on what are some of the secrets of how to get better at talking to people. Because inevitably, if you haven't done it, and it might feel very uncomfortable to engage in social interactions. I feel like we're all going to have difficulty with that once we get out of quarantine, but practice makes perfect. So one of the things they had to name for this one was something you can observe about a person that you can't observe about a person when talking through a device, like I am with you right now, versus in real life. Now, if I was in like a lecture hall with you and I'm presenting, I'm going to see, if you're with me, I'm going to see people slouching or on their phones, and maybe I can like gauge where the interest level is. Same thing with your students. You might be talking to them and they have their cameras turned off and you have no clue. And it's interesting to note how important that nonverbal feedback is. And that nonverbal feedback loop is now missing. So they just had to answer for this question, give me one of the examples, and then I included all of the examples that were given in the video as part of the feedback. So they could see that right away and kind of see where they are. Now, when it comes time to give to score it, so to speak, what I also love about Google Forms is that I have 3 tabs to grade. I can grade by summary, which kind of gives me like a question by question overview of how the students did. I can grade by question, and then I can grade by individual. Question is by far my favorite because it does a few things for me. It removes student names from the question. So as I'm going through, I can see, 3 people said body language. Yep, that's a correct answer. That's one of the things. So I can just click this little green check, and those 3 quizzes, or those 3 answers, gain that point. And then I can scroll through here and I can see what people have put, and I can just click this green check to award the point. And then I also can change the feedback. So this is the generalized feedback that I left on the question. But let's say this is a wrong answer. I might want to click on that edit and just give some more defined feedback for those 3 responses, those 3 people that said that answer. I can change the feedback for all 3 kids at once by clicking here. So it makes the grading anonymous. I get to do bulk feedback, but in a way that makes sense. And that helps me kind of move through it a little bit faster and in a more meaningful way. You can also click on individual, and that just is going to give you student by student. You can see their entire form. You can give them feedback within. So there's 3 really great ways to grade within that Google form. Now, when I'm done with this, I just have to go back into Google Classroom and import their score, and the score comes in. So the students can see the score. I can give feedback on the score itself through their private comments in Google Classroom. So if you're with me in my Google Classroom, if you're interested in seeing how this shakes out for you as a student, I have the Google Forms quiz, the secrets of getting better at talking to people. If you want to try it, you're welcome to try it. All of you should be able to take this assessment if you want to click on it here through the slides. And then the other one is quizzes, where again, the score imports automatically. So I'm going to take you over to my actual Google Classroom here to show you what this looks like. So under the quizzes game, this is a 2nd grade level or so money game. I see I've got 60 of you here in this Google Classroom with me. 1 is graded. So I'm going to click on the graded one so you can see when a student's work comes in, what that looks like. All right, so this is Joe's student's work. Joe has 2 attachments. What that means is that Joe took the quiz 2 times. So I'm going to scroll down over here. And here under graded, because I've already entered it, Joe's best score on the quizzes assignment is 90 out of 100. So I can see that it was 2 attempts to get that. Sometimes with quizzes, I'll ask students to take it until they get a certain level of proficiency. For Joe, maybe I want to push Joe a little bit. And I know that Joe can get 100% if they try again. Maybe they only missed 1 or 2. So I might say, please try again until you get 100%. If I know what mistake they're making, I can place that in the comments as well. Now, it's shown as graded, and this has been returned to Joe so that Joe can see he's done with that task. Checked off the list. Whereas if you're in here again as a student and you're not done with it, it kind of shows that you don't have a score yet. And then that's something that you can do. So quizzes imports those scores. I have found that it might take 5 minutes, 10 minutes, depends on the internet connection for that score to update. I noticed the lag when I took it as Joe and then came back over to look at the feedback. And there was a little bit of a lag there. So those are 2 of my favorite tools that bring in those scores automatically and allow me to keep the feedback loop then continuing out of the tool and keep that going in Google Classroom.
Jocelynn, could you show when a student takes the quiz as a form, how does the grade get into Classroom?
I can absolutely show that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so under my classwork tab, I'm going to go down to my Google form. I can see I've got 1 turned in. One of you brave souls took it, so thank you. I can see I've got 1 graded. So what I want to show, I'm just going to go into the assignment itself by clicking View Assignment. Okay. Now, do you see this button over here? Import grade. So right now my import is disabled. If that happens to you, it's an easy fix. You can edit the assignment and toggle off and toggle back on. So I'll show you that in a second since that's looking a little weird. Thank you, John, for taking the quiz. So it means I have to go out and import your score and grade it. I'm going to scroll down to Joe's student where it has been graded. So in Google Forms, I'm jumping over here. This is what Joe's response looks like in Google Forms. So I can release the score and I can release it piecemeal or I can release it all at once. So I can check all the boxes of the kids who I want the score to go back to, or I can go 1 at a time. So once I've released the score to Joe, then I come back to Google Classroom and then I import the scores and I can import them kind of all at once. So right now it's mad at me. So I just need to go and edit the assignment to make if you do see import disabled, it happens. I'm not really sure why, but I'm going to show you what this looks like when you post the assignment. So if I were posting a Google form right now, and I'm filling it out, this is my assignment. Here is my Google form that I've attached. Down here underneath, there is this toggle for grade importing. And that's just kind of giving the permission, yep, I want to be able to bring in my Google Forms scores right into Google Classroom and then click Save. And so once that assignment posts for students and you go through and grade them in Google Forms, you can ingest those scores right into Google Classroom. So now you can see it's back.
Just to confirm, this Google form was created starting in Classroom, not starting in Forms, right?
I actually prefer to start in Forms.
Okay.
I don't typically select quiz assignment when I create the assignment. And the reason for that is it seems to kind of get goofy when it tries to create a blank form for you. And you're like, wait, I already have a form that I want to use. So you can either do a quiz assignment in Google Classroom. So what they're saying, and I can kind of show you that workshop, how that looks. Under the Create button, there is a quiz assignment option. But the problem is when I click it, look at this, it's creating this blank quiz. And if I already have the quiz made, you can just X that and then go add your own, or you can, now it becomes a regular assignment anyway. So I don't typically click that. I haven't found a huge use for that. So good question. But to pop back over to my Google form, I can import grade, and then I can import, and it replaces these scores with whatever was left kind of in Google Classroom at that time. So for Joe, it's a 9 out of 10. I don't have yours automatically graded. John got 2 automatic points. I still have to go through and like make sure, you know, I can give him feedback and look at the other questions because I asked a lot of open-ended questions. If you ask multiple choice questions or the questions where there's a defined answer, then you don't necessarily have to go in and review each question in order for the whole score to import. So it just really depends on the type of questions that you're asking in your Google form.
I just want to share some of the comments because for the people watching on YouTube Live, one of them, someone said that if you start in a form, you need to make sure that quiz is selected in the form, otherwise the import grades feature will not appear.
Correct.
So meaning that if you haven't told it to grade something, there won't be any grades to pull in.
Correct.
And then another person's wondering if they'll have access to this classroom class after today.
Yeah, I'll leave it open.
Great, thank you.
That would be helpful. Yeah. So I'm going to click on the settings gear of this form. So we'll pretend that this is just starting off as a form. If you click on the settings gear, you have 3 tabs. You have general, presentation, and quizzes. And so what you do is in the quizzes tab, you do have to toggle that make this a quiz, which then by default assigns the point values to the questions to allow for auto grading. So that part is important. And again, I typically release the grade right away. If it's like an actual summative assessment, you can decide how you feel about that. But for just formative, for daily work that I want those scores to pop in automatically, I usually do immediate. So they get the snap on the spot feedback.
And Jocelynn, we've had a comment that someone can't get into that Google Forms quiz, that the settings, it says that they need permission.
Okay. Thought I had it open, but let me take a look. Oh, that's probably why. Okay, if you refresh that link or try it again, it should let you in. Sorry about that.
Thank you.
Okay. I'm going to jump a little bit. We're going to talk about verbal feedback. I think one of the things that does get lost in the feedback loop, it's going to take a second to share here, is the fact that they can't hear your voice when you read a comment. And I don't know if you guys have ever misread an email or misread the tone of an email and you get really angry because you're like, how could they talk to me that way? I've been guilty of it. I think you read emails with the lens of how you're feeling in the moment. And if it's at all questionable in terms of its tone, it's really hard to tell that. And so I think one of the things our students need most right now is encouragement and support. And we're trying to build relationships right now, and that's really difficult. And so verbal feedback, spoken feedback, or even video feedback are 2 ways to really share with your students that you're there for them. One of my favorite new extensions, and I'm going to full disclosure, this is in beta. It is kind of being tested, but it's called Moat Chrome extension. It is fantastic though. So what I'm sharing with you here is an example. This is my daughter's work that she had to do for e-learning. And I was able to take a picture of it and attach that picture to a Google Classroom assignment. And so that allows for the feedback loops to continue within Google Classroom, even for work that is on paper, that you're asking students to, it's not digital at all. You just want them to take a picture of it for feedback. So Google Classroom is phenomenal for that. The app in general, and I'll show you the app in just a second. But for spoken feedback, if you install the Moat Chrome extension, you have to totally shut your browser and come back in. It allows you to record your voice spoken feedback on anything in Google Classroom. Doesn't have to be a doc or a slide or anything in Google. It can be whatever they're submitting to you as an assignment in Google Classroom. You can record your voice on that. It also transcribes your voice and you can make corrections. So reading this now, I'm like, oh, there's a few typos that I might have reworked. But you can edit the transcription and then the student can play it and hear your voice. And so it takes the tonality question mark out of the situation. So sometimes feedback can be, it can be almost interpreted as punitive. And that's not necessarily how you meant it. You're just trying to give them some tips for improvement, but it might come across as like, here's everything you're doing wrong. It's all in how the student reads it, not necessarily how you type it. So if you're able to give them this play button, they get to hear, the tone of your voice and the support, and they can hear the passion in your voice that you want to help them. And that might help things a little bit as well. And just to hear your voice, because that's important too during this distance learning period. So Moat Chrome extension. I looked into the privacy policy. They don't collect student data. I have not turned this on for our students. So when they do click that play button, it does pop a little tab and then play the audio for them. If you do have the Chrome extension pushed out to all of your students, they can play it right within that window without having to leave it. So that's a benefit of installing that kind of more system-wide. I'm not quite at the point where I'm ready to pull that trigger yet, but I do think I'm really liking it. And I just want to make sure that they're not going to collect student data before I hit the go button on that. But as of right now, they're recording my voice in allowing those private comments. Another great tool for verbal feedback is MicNote. This is a Chrome extension also. It gives you this handy dandy notebook where you can type out your thoughts in advance. And then you click the record button up here. You get up to 10 minutes per recording. And all of these can be set to sync automatically with your Google Drive. So I know a lot of teachers who've used this for read alouds so that they can attach, like in a Google slide, they can have some audio of instructions for students or snippets of books or whatever they're reading to their students. And it's been really working well for us. You do have to, in the options, kind of go through this sync setup where you tell it to send it as an MP3 to your Google Drive so that you can pull it right into Google Classroom. You can pull it right in. You can use MicNote and then record it, and then in Google Classroom attach it to a student's work. So that's a possibility as well for providing some spoken feedback. That's a little longer. You can even ask students to use it. So these are two verbal feedback tools I use. It's important to note that Moat is 1 minute per comment. So that's just something to know. Yeah.
One teacher asked if Moat would only work in Google Classroom or if it could be used in Schoology as well. I know that it's currently Classroom and Google Doc integrated. Do you have any information about Schoology?
I don't believe it's a Schoology thing yet, but that doesn't mean that it's not coming. I just know that they integrate right now with Chrome, but that's something we can look into. Maybe answer that question in the meet.
Great. And then someone else is wondering if there's a way to prevent students from just submitting assignment without attempting it.
That's a really good question. There's not really a way to limit that, but if a kid does it, I return it right away with a comment. I know I was talking to a teacher the other day that said, that they'd gone back and forth like 4 times. Like the student submitted with nothing done. She returned it. Happened again, returned. And then it's strongly worded. And then it was like, okay, now we're going to have to make a phone call home because this isn't quite working. So I know it does happen, and that's kind of unfortunate. I just want to, while I have this screen up, I want to share with you. So this is my Android phone right now. And if you are using Google Classroom with your students, it is very much worth installing the Google Classroom app on a mobile device and encouraging your families, if they are able to do so, if they have the capacity to install this app as well, because I want to show you what this looks like. So right now I'm logged in as a student. If I hit that hamburger icon up in the top corner with the little red dot, there is something that is not anywhere else on Google Classroom, and that is the notifications tab. You can see here with notifications, I've got 47 notifications as a student, but private comments come back in those notifications. So I just wanted to share that really quick. I can also switch to my personal or my teacher account by clicking, and it brings me to that Google Classroom. And now I can see things as a teacher. So it is worth noting that this
Jocelynn, whatever
app is
you're
fantastic.
showing us right now, we can't see.
Oh, well, darn it. Okay.
And while you're
Thanks, Devin.
navigating, someone did respond that right now Mote is not integrated in Schoology. Sean was able to answer that for us.
Thank you. Okay, I'm hoping I can show you that in a little bit. I know we're running a little later on time. I want to show you in terms of how to give feedback. One thing it's super hard to avoid right now is something called autopsy feedback. This is a phrase coined, I think I first heard it from Alice Keeler, but it's feedback that happens after the learning has already taken place, because students tend to just kind of shut down and move on from things once they're done with it. And so when you provide feedback, it's so hard to get them to come back and read your feedback and do something and act on it. So some ways that you can change that is to act or respond to student feedback. Using that automatic feedback where it works is a really great place to start. You can also ask your students to read and respond to your feedback before you release their grade. You can return the work with feedback, but not a score yet. And then that's going to promote, oh, what do I need to do to get a score? I mean, I think they're so trained to try to get a score, but if we can try to aim for completion by reacting to feedback, that's a nice place to start. So here's what it looks like in the app. This is just a screenshot, but in the app on a device, Android or iOS, there's a notifications tab where you can see all of the private comments that have been left. And so teachers have this, students have this. So this is super helpful in being able to see if you have any comments waiting for you, because I know that's a common thing people have struggled with as well. As much as possible, if I know my students are working on, this is an example of like a digital workbook in Google Slides where they have instructions at the bottom. If I can leave them feedback while they're in the slideshow, that's like home run, because they'll make the changes when they see me pop in like a little Google Ninja on the side. They've compared that. My students always thought it was really weird when I'd pop into their work when they were in the room with me. Now we're not in the room together anymore, but if you can provide some comments on the side by using this button on Google Work, that's helpful too. So for those of you in the elementary world, if you see your families are in, like if you do Google Slides and you see that they're in there, pop in and say hi. They love it. And then it's almost like you're together. So that's kind of a fun way to do it. And then you can see which slides have comments on them based on over in the sidebar, you can see the little one next to these. So you can see where the comments have been placed. Both students and teachers can see that. I changed my Gmail in order to enable a priority inbox to help me with my private comments and to prioritize them for me. So I actually have 4 categories. All my unread messages go in the first one, any private comments just in the second. So I can just go through and focus just on the comments my students have made and how those are coming in. So if you're curious on how to do that, there's a video linked here for you in the slides. A lot of people ask me what grading looks like in Google Classroom. So I want to share, this is the student view of the View Your Work tab. So you guys, if you are a teacher in Google Classroom and you don't have a way to see the student view, this is what the student view looks like. So the student can click on the classwork tab and then view your work. And then it's a digest of their work, their scores, and they can see if there's private comments left on that work. So they show up as like a text bubble. They can also apply some filters so they can see what's just assigned, like they still need to do it, what's been returned with a grade, and what's been missing. Teachers, if you want to look at that view, you have it sort of. If you click on people in your class and then directly on the name of a student, it will bring you to the same view, essentially. It's just called something different, but both teachers and students have that work. One thing that might help with Google Classroom, I know a lot of elementary teachers struggle with scoring. I don't know how much you're scoring. I know I was talking with a 4th grade teacher who they don't necessarily score work like traditionally, like with point totals. And so what you might consider is something more standards based with like a rubric score or even a rubric based on feedback. And with that, it gives the parents kind of a, okay, are they done? What haven't they done? Where are they at in the process? And it allows you to return student work and have that back and forth that I think is really important if you're using Google Classroom effectively. So I'm going to rush through this, but just taking a look at some of what that might look like for you. You all probably have your methods right now for grading that are already in place, but consider in Google Classroom, rubric scoring might be a way forward in keeping that feedback loop open and having students seek improvement versus necessarily just improvement. So the grades tab is kind of at the heart of the matter here. I can return student work in bulk right here. I can click right on a submission to take me directly to that submission. I can click directly on an assignment to take me to the grading tab for providing feedback on work. But it's so important to return all work as much as you can. It's gonna, basically it does a few things. If parents sign up for Guardian summaries in Google Classroom, if you're not having that flow of returning work, things will still show as missing. I have students still who don't turn things in officially, but they're done with it. So I still go look at it and I can grade it and return it, even if they haven't clicked submit. I can say it until I'm blue in the face, please submit your work. I still get students who don't officially do that. So I can get around that just by returning the work. And even if you want to return it for feedback or as like, hey, you forgot to do this, you can still return it with feedback without scoring it. So that's important to note. There's two ways to provide comments on oh yeah, go ahead. Question.
Sorry. So one teacher was asking about in those assignments that you were showing, the titles, do you have little icons or emojis at the beginning of those?
I do.
When you're back in the classroom screen, would you be willing to show us how you did those?
Yeah.
Thanks.
I can show you right now. So I have an extension called Emoji Keyboard. And so
someone just put it in the chat. That's amazing.
Thank you, Glorianne. I know her. Emoji Keyboard is great because you can search. So if I enable this right now, I can search by topic. I can type something in that I'm looking for, and then I can copy and paste that into the titles of my work. Seems silly, but I think sometimes using Bitmojis and emojis with my students just kind of personalizes things a little bit more. I don't know. I don't know if that really works, but it feels a little more personal when you do it that way, especially in the elementary world. I know elementary kids love that, but even my 9th graders, I feel like they like it too. So Emojipedia is another great one. Thank you. Thanks, Sean. I think so.
Someone else is wondering if a student didn't have to do the assignment, if they were like exempt from an assignment, is there a way to make it so it doesn't show up as missing?
So what I would do in that case is I would, in Google Classroom, when you assign work, you can pick the students it goes to. And I would really encourage you to do that, because then for the student who doesn't have to do that assignment, they just never get it. And it's not just sitting there showing. So to show you really quick how to do that, back to my classroom. Under the classwork tab, that create button. So if I click assignment, over here on the side, I can see all of my students. So if I uncheck and then I just select the people who should get the assignment, they're the only ones that will be able to view it in Google Classroom. It's pretty handy. When students miss a live video or a live class, I'll push out the live video recording to just the kids who need it. And then I usually will link it later just in case someone wants to go back and rewatch, but typically kids are done with it at that point. But it is nice to differentiate by kind of, oh, these two don't need that specific assignment, and I can assign them something modified.
Jocelynn, I do know that it's 2:45. We could probably take maybe 2 more minutes to get through what you can. And I'll be putting a link to Google Meet where people can continue the conversation once our session is over.
Perfect. There's one more thing I just want to mention. Batch returning work with comments. This is so helpful. And when I realized it, it was such a light bulb moment for me. Students, as they are turning in work, I can select multiple students, and maybe they have made the same mistake, or maybe I need the same thing that they need to resubmit. I can go into here and I can select both of them and click return, and this same statement will go to both students. So it's a really nice way to kind of pick and group how you normally have like maybe given feedback to kids in small groups in your class. It's a nice way to continue some of the work on those skills when returning work in Google Classroom. So I would encourage taking a look at those batch comments. And then you can see it just, this is a grading window where I've given a comment in the slide, and I also use private comments. So I just wanted to show that you can do both, and both can be valuable for different reasons. So I know we have like 3 minutes left, so I'm sorry I took a lot of time explaining all of that, but if there's other questions, thank you for moderating, Devin. You're awesome.
You're welcome. I'm also putting the CEU form link in there. If any of you are hoping to get CEUs from today's session, you will be able to do that with the link that I'm providing in the chat. Someone's wondering if students can resolve a comment that you type and then it might disappear.
Sure, that's a common question I get with this. So if they click resolve, it looks like it disappears. But if you click that comment button again, it's still there, it's just resolved. So all of those comments, even if they get resolved, they can be brought back or restored by you or the student, but they are just kind of minimized in that little chat bubble up at the top. Good question.
Thanks. All right, so I'm going to encourage those of you who'd like to continue talking to go ahead and click on that Google Meet link now, because once the window closes to close the room, you won't be able to get back in to this. But this will be posted on the YouTube page once it's closed out, around the same time that the next session starts.
Thanks, Devin. I see, can you unassign work to certain students? I do believe that I've edited an assignment, and I think I was able to pull back from some of the students in a list. Don't quote me on that, Katie, but I'm pretty sure I've done it and I think it works. So maybe test it before you count on it, but I think that would be something to try. So thank you everybody for attending today. I know it's kind of a lot of information I've thrown at you. But I think the more that we can provide some really meaningful feedback, that keeps the relationships going. And really, I'm trying to prioritize that with my own class. So again, thank you.
Someone's wondering about the YouTube live page. I've dropped that link in there. It'll have to wait until this is done. And then the CEU after, I think after each class, but I actually don't know. I'm so sorry, but I can talk to you about it in the Meet. So if everyone,
that's a
no problem.
great
so the
question
CEUs,
also.
head over there.
CEUs
Go
can
ahead.
be done either by the entire day or by each session. I'd encourage you to reflect at the end of the day instead of the end of the 2-day summit. So if you're going to do it for a long period, do it at the end of today. Otherwise, you can provide that CEU reflection for each session. And what will end up happening is you'll just get multiple PDFs.
Perfect.
So there's about 100 people in the room still. I'm going to be closing out this session to open up our next session. Joss and Devin, thank you so much for sharing your expertise and moderating so well.
Thank you.
Help me.